Live from the Scripps Studios, this is 10 News.
One of only 2 migrants to be granted asylum in San Diego since a controversial immigration policy was implemented is talking to 10 News tonight. That policy forced asylum seekers back to Mexico while they wait for their trials.
10 News reporter Matt Boone has that man's story.
I feel extremely happy. I'm very emotional about the situation.
This is Marcos. He didn't want us to show his face or use his full name, still fearing the gang he fled in El Salvador.
They're a terrorist group. When they say you leave or otherwise, you will get killed.
He knew making the trip to the United States would be difficult, but that was the position he found himself in earlier this year after he tried to protect his cousin who was being recruited by a gang. After making the trek through Mexico in June, he crossed the border illegally near Tecate.
I've wandered through the desert for about 5 days, and then I was caught by Border Patrol, and I asked for asylum, and they sent me to a detention center with immigration, and then I was removed back to Mexico.
He was sent back in what's become known as the Remain in Mexico policy, also called the Migrant Protection Protocol. Since it was implemented in January, 42,000 people seeking asylum have been sent back to Mexico as of September 1st.
This individual is a bit of a rarity.
Narciso Cruz helped represent Marcos. He says under the MPP, Marcos is only the second person to be granted asylum as tens of thousands wait across the border.
It's a war of attrition, if you ask me.
Marcos says he's eager to start his life in America, but even with the decision, it's still possible the government could appeal.
I hope they don't appeal, but if they don't appeal, I hope to never return to El Salvador.
That was our Matt Boone reporting the government has 30 days to appeal. In the meantime, Marcos plans to stay with family on the East Coast.
Breaking news now, a man is dead tonight after crashing his bicycle into the train in Carlsbad. Now, these are live pictures. Photojournalist Paul Anderegg is in our breaking news tracker. Paul, what can you tell us?
We're here near Washington and Grand, right where it crosses the tracks here near the Carlsbad Village Station. You can see they still have the road blocked off here. This happened around 7:30 tonight, when that man on a bicycle actually rode into the side of a train. Now you can see there are crossing arms here down across the lanes, but you can see those are only in the direction that the street traffic is going, and it looks like that victim was on the other side there. So he may not have been able to see that train coming due to the trees if he was coming towards the camera here. So they've got hazmat crews on scene here. That victim was transported to the hospital, unfortunately Tri-City Hospital, where he was declared dead. Train service was disrupted for some time. We don't know yet if they've got that opened up yet. And Sheriff's Department's continuing to stand by on scene here and continue their investigation. We're going to stay on scene also, bringing more updates on 10 News this morning. Back to you.
Flames pouring from that home in Lakeside, and tonight a family is without a place to live. It started just after 5 in the garage on Aquila Drive. A neighbor returning home from the grocery store stopped to call 911 when he saw the fire.
Well, it kept getting worse, and there was explosions, like gas tanks exploding and sparks flying out of the house. 2 adults and a child were inside that house at the time, but they were able to get out okay. Firefighters evacuated nearby homes as they worked quickly to knock down the flames. That fire did not spread to the home itself, but the house does have significant water damage. There is no word yet on a cause.
New information out of Northern California, where a skydiver was killed after crash landing on a freeway. The woman hit a semi-truck on Highway 99 near the Lodi Airport. CHP says the skydiver was a 28-year-old woman from Colombia. She was skydiving with a group of 7 people when she was blown off course and hit the big rig. The other 6 people in her group landed safely. The skydivers took off from the Lodi Parachute Center. And today's death is the latest in a series of fatalities and violations at the center. As many as 20 people have died on jumps with that center since it opened in the early 80s. At least 6 of them died in the last 4 years. In 2018, the FBI raided the facility. In 2016, federal regulators investigated a deadly tandem jump involving an instructor who wasn't properly licensed. That led to several instructors being suspended and 140 others being required to get additional training.
New developments in Chicago's school teachers' fight for better wages. Tonight, they voted to authorize a strike as early as next month. And this is video from a union rally there on Tuesday. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot says there's a city proposal that will offer teachers pay hikes of 16% over a 5-year period. She added that additional job positions the union wants are, quote, baked into the budget for this year.
People in East Lake are trying to stop a mental health facility from being built in their neighborhood. They met with the people behind the plan tonight and say they're more determined than ever to make sure it never happens. Dozens of people turned out to this open house style meeting, eager to get a look at plans for the East Lake Behavioral Health Hospital. If approved, the 120-bed facility would be a partnership between Scripps Health and Acadia Healthcare. Those behind it say it's desperately needed.
A county this size should have about 1,700 psychiatric inpatient beds. There are only about 706 beds currently.
And while a group calling themselves Chula Vista Safe says they understand, they don't want it in their neighborhood.
This will be one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in San Diego County, and we know that it will be here to service the county, not just the residents.
They're worried about what could happen if patients escape or are released into the community, a concern Scripps says they understand but are trying to address.
There'll be secure fencing around the area. There'll be 24-hour security presence. There'll be a designated entrance and exit for patients, visitors, and their families.
Those opposed also have issues with Acadia Healthcare, citing reports of patient abuse, wrongful death, and even fraud at other locations.
We don't think that this is the type of company that will do a good job taking care of the vulnerable members of our community.
Acadia's chief medical officer defending its record.
No hospital system, no matter what organ they're treating, can have a record of absolutely no adverse outcomes.
Now, the East Lake Mental Health Hospital is still going through the approval process. It could be months before any final decision is made.
All right, President Trump showing his anger and frustration as the possibility of a long and dangerous impeachment fight continues to grow.
This as lawmakers get their hands on the whistleblower complaint at the center of it all. ABC's Rachel Scott is in Washington with today's testimony from the acting director of National Intelligence.
The nation's top intelligence official pitted between lawmakers and the White House over a whistleblower complaint.
You went to the White House first. So you went to the subject of the complaint for advice first about whether you should provide the complaint to Congress.
If it does have executive privilege, it is the White House that determines that.
Joseph McGuire, the acting director of National Intelligence, defending his decision to keep that complaint under wraps. At the center of the dispute, a July phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine, where the president repeatedly urged him to investigate his potential 2020 rival Joe Biden and his son. The president defending that call.
My call was perfect.
But from his own party, a few signs of wavering support.
I want to say to the president, this is not okay. It isn't, that conversation is not okay.
In the complaint, the whistleblower said White House officials were deeply disturbed and reported hearing that officials were directed to remove the electronic transcript from the computer systems where they are normally stored. The president, behind closed doors, vented his frustrations in this audio obtained by the LA Times.
I want to know who's the person that gave the whistleblower, who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information? Because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? The spies and treason. We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
President Trump has taken aim at the credibility of the whistleblower, but the acting director of National Intelligence said he had no reason to believe the person who made the complaint was being disloyal to the country, adding that the whistleblower did the right thing by coming forward. Rachel Scott, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Former Congressman Darrell Issa announced today he's running to unseat indicted East County Congressman Duncan Hunter. Issa says he won't make his campaign about Hunter's legal troubles, though. He says he considers Hunter a friend and called him yesterday to tell him he'd be running for the seat.
He deserves his day in court. I expect everyone to presume he's innocent until proven guilty, but we are here because we believe that we need a single candidate who can, in fact, assure that this conservative district stays in conservative hands.
Hunter is scheduled to go to trial in January on campaign fraud charges 2 months before the primary. And in a statement, Hunter's camp said in part, Congressman Hunter has been honored to earn the support of his constituents and proudly represent them in Congress for 6 consecutive terms. Congressman Hunter looks forward to earning their support again in 2020. And there were 8 candidates vying for the congressional seat before Issa entered the race. 4 dropped out today and immediately endorsed Issa. In addition to Issa, the remaining Republicans are incumbent Duncan Hunter, Carl DeMaio, and State Senator Brian Jones. On the Democratic side, Amar Campanajjar is running again after last year's narrow defeat to Hunter. And tomorrow on 10 News This Morning at 6, Issa will be on set to talk about his decision to run.